Thank you all. Thank you, and good morning again. And thank you for referring to the titles of our panelists. You'll see on page 5 and 6 of your program a more extensive, fulsome, appropriate description of their backgrounds. Also like to recognize some of you, some of whom are recipients of the Irvine Foundation Philanthropy. Dr. Anguiano is also the chairwoman of the board for the James Irvine Foundation. So. Okay. And you might know that Fresno and Merced are actually newly targeted areas of focus by the foundation. So terrific. I want to acknowledge that. Well, this is a wonderful opportunity, really, to listen from people that are absolutely in the know and in the rooms where important decisions are being made and financial obligations are being decided that affect our enterprise. And so we have a number of questions that I'd like to pose to the panelists and remind you, again, the CSU Chancellor, Dr. Mildred García, Sonya, the Chancellor of the California Community Colleges, I think one of the largest in the country. I think the CSU is the largest in the country. Kristen Soares, who André, Dr. Stevens recognized as well. And of course, Maria Anguiano, the Vice Chairwoman also of the Board of Regents of the University of California. So with that, and the title, and I'll tell you, I didn't notice until I was walking up here, our reason, delivering equity and inclusion for over 250,000 students. That's a pretty good reason for existing. And the reason and the mechanism through which we deliver that principle, that value, those values, is through the value of higher education. So here's a question that I'm going to ask all of the panelists, and beginning with Dr. Anguiano, and then ending with Dr. Soares, that I think is an important sort of level-setting question. The value of higher ed. Across the country, we're hearing more and more debate, Maria, about whether or not a college degree is still necessary. And as a leader, and all of you in higher ed systems, how do you respond to this question? What would you say to our audience, to our students, to those online who are questioning the value proposition of higher ed?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Really an honor to be with all of you here today. I would say listen to them. Listen to the students. Listen to the people that are saying that they're questioning the value. Because what they're saying, when you talk to people, no one is questioning the value of learning or education. They're questioning the cost of a degree. They're questioning the rigid structure of our degree programs, and they're questioning the relevance of those degree programs. And that's really important that we as education leaders listen to and take into account, because we know that a degree is important for people to thrive. But what does that mean, and how do we provide it in a way that's more cost effective? How do we provide it in a way that's more accessible, right? And I'll speak just for UC because I know some of our colleges are more accessible, but at UC, it's very difficult to get into UC, right? And we need to create more accessibility for UC. People are saying it's hard to get in and out, and it's such a huge amount of effort to get in, and is it worth it? Am I gonna get the return? I think that's a fair question. And so I think we're thinking about that very deeply at UC, and figuring out different ways, like I said, to make it just more accessible, more relevant, so that we can, really talk to students and know that they're going to get at the end of the day, people want a job when they graduate, right? All I wanted when I went to college as a first-generation student is a job. And so we have to be honest with our students to say, here are the jobs available for you. It's not just about job skills, right? But it's getting people ready to thrive in the workplace. And I think that's super important. So I'll stop there because I could go on and on.
Dr. Kristen?
Good morning. Well, first I want to start by saying hello, Central Valley. It's always a
Welcome back.
homecoming
Welcome.
for me. So can I hear some noise from my Central Valley colleagues? Gosh, you're awfully quiet this morning. Ben, what's going on here? Well, I'm used to a rowdy bunch, discussing issues and always, though, collaborating for the good of Californians and for the good of students. So I would agree with many of the points, all of the points that Maria has been making related to affordability, relevance, and so on. For the community college students, getting into, in terms of tuition, access is there. The issues are more related to housing and other basic needs support. I mean, recently, there was a data report that showed in the last 5 years in California, the median household income has increased 30%. So, I mean, it's a universal problem. But what I want to lean into to Chancellor Muñoz's question in terms of value of higher education is leaning into this concept of skills becoming a driving force within the federal landscape and even the state landscape. Wherever we turn as educators, what do we hear? You know, that our graduates don't have the skills to enter into the job market, and particularly given with AI impacting, you know, computer science to advanced manufacturing to any sector you look at, there's that particular impact. And initially, a long time ago when I was president, I really leaned into this narrative that we've got to be connected with our industry and really quickly responsive so we can be ahead of industry innovation happening so that our curriculum is ready when that innovation hits the market. But today, being older, I guess, and wiser, and looking at who takes care of the ecosystem where the work resides, right? Who takes care of that? The policymakers and those who maybe are in the, you know, the wealthy, who takes care of that? And shouldn't higher education also be focused, not get so caught up in the skills conversation, but also look at enduring abilities of thinkers that will shape the environment within which the work resides? You know, the policy level discussions. So today, you know, it's a worker-centered as well as industry-centered by looking at social cohesiveness. We are living in times when there's a lot of craziness happening, that the social cohesiveness becomes as critical as economic stability. So it's a both and, it's not an either or, and it's a false dichotomy. So as higher education, I think we have got to lean into the narrative of saying that really a college credential, whatever we call it, a degree or a certificate, has two things. That's our narrative. One is focused on the skills. Like if you look at a biology degree or you look at a construction associate's degree, there are the technical skills, the discipline skills, like learning anatomy and physiology and so on. But there's also the sociology. How do you make sure that society is cohesive and has the values of taking care of everyone, taking care of our human beings? If we remember our history and that we remember our ethics, and that is what general education does. So it's a both and value proposition that we need to respond to, but also educate our public policy makers. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kristen. Evocative. Dr. Garcia, you know, just a point of privilege, you know, Mildred García leads one of the largest, if not the largest, public higher ed system in the country, the first Latina to do so. But even before that, she was a patient mentor to many of us. So just a moment of privilege right there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's wonderful being here with you today. And I agree with my colleagues. They've said many of the points. It is about listening to students. It is about affordability. It is about connection with industry. But they're asking for something else. Show us how you're doing it. And that's extremely important, the return on investment. So one of the things that we really need to do is keep it affordable. And at the CSU, 65% of our students graduate with no debt, 500,000. Think about that. Because the tuition is under $7,000. Now that's a lot for many of our families. But we also are saying that families that make $75,000 and under will pay no tuition, no fees. That is also important for the students and for the families to know that. And when we talk about affordability, you have to talk about talking to the families in their language and in their space. Because it is so important for our students to talk to the family as to why they want to go to college. And the families need to understand, why are you giving up that, I'm going to say Walmart job, to go to college when we need you to help us to support the family? And that's where we come in with the connections with industry, but not only to find those pathways, but to ensure that they are paid internships for our students so that they are getting their foot in the door, getting to know that career, whatever that may be, and then decide, yes, I want to go down this path. And those industries immediately will hire the students because we've done so well in educating them. Just yesterday, I was at Fresno State where President Jimenez Sandoval, he pulled together leaders from across the Central Valley. And we talked about the importance of the population in Central Valley. And in that meeting, when I said we need to collaborate, not only higher ed, K-12, and the UC, it has to be the industries. It has to be the hospitals. It has to be nonprofit. The mayor of Fresno immediately spoke up and said, I have a plan for you, President Jimenez Sandoval. We can do some of these paid internships. And immediately, that is what we should be doing. Talking to them, collaborating with them, having advisory councils that ensure that our students will get the necessary return on investment. And it's not, as Sonya Kristen just said, it's not only economic mobility, it's social and economic mobility, preparing our students to live in a democracy and give back as members of the Central Valley. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. I tell you, I just want to underscore the uniqueness of the panel because we often hear about the community college system, we often hear about the CSU, we often hear about the UC, but less often, Dr. Soares, do people realize the University of Redlands, University of La Verne, University of San Francisco, University of San Diego, that the private institutions are also an absolutely essential part of the fabric of the ecosystem of higher ed training preparation for students to move from community colleges onto these wonderful institutions. And so Dr. Soares represents the independent colleges. And so your thoughts, working with a variety of very diverse, both institutionally and geographically, colleges and universities, and your thoughts about how you and the membership interpret this question about the value proposition of higher education.
Thank you for that, and I really appreciate that introduction. And so much has been said already, but we think about it the same, and I think we think about it maybe, I don't want to say differently, but we know that we absolutely are in a moment of time. And as nearly 100 independent institutions, I believe there's 116 community colleges, 23 CSUs, 10 UCs, we have to work together around this, this question of value. Because we all know sitting here, and as you said, a higher education degree is absolutely worth it. It transforms a person's lives, and it transforms their families' lives, and it transforms the communities. So being here in the Central Valley, where this work is interconnected, I'm so pleased to be here. Ben, thank you for the invitation. It was 10 years in coming since the last time I was here, but we'll talk about that later. But this is a moment in time for us to really lead and to really own this, what's taking place right now. We have to change the narrative. We know sitting here how important this degree is. So we have to build the partnerships. We have to talk about affordability in really tangible ways. But we also have to make higher education much more relevant to our students today. And from the moment they come onto our campus, as you heard Dr. Garcia, we have to have partnerships with industry so that they can see where their degree is going to lead to when they graduate. So that doesn't take place That doesn't take place at the end of the 4 years. That work has to really take place at the beginning of their journey. And I think we know we're in a moment of disruption because of AI, as Sonya said, and we have to really double down on the skills our students need to succeed today. And so what we do best in critical thinking, what we do best in teaching communication, adaptability, those skills are universal, and those are the skills that we really need to focus on as higher education institutions as we rebuild this trust in what we do. A college education is absolutely worth it, and all you have to do is look at our students. And so as a set of private institutions, Chancellor, we're really focused on our mission and serving students and serving their families and serving them well and making sure we're making all the connections. But we have to talk about and demonstrate why it's worth it. So we've created Higher Education Worth It. It's a campaign, and it's all focused on our student stories and student journeys. And we have to do more of it. We have to talk about it more, and we need to be in partnership, quite frankly, in regions up and down this state.
Thank you for that, Kristen. You know, it's interesting to me as I think about these, as I grapple with these same issues. Universities, colleges are always very sort of focused on their immediate sort of issues, and we fail to at least be cognizant of the larger tapestry of the 100 privates in private colleges and universities, the 23 of the CSUs, the 9 general academic institutions of the UC, the 113. That's quite a tapestry of higher education possibilities. And we become a little bit maybe too parochial and a little bit too myopic in our thinking and fail to appreciate the potentiating possibilities of what that kind of force could be in terms of disruptively good. And I appreciate Sonya's comment about sort of durability, these things that we inculcate that transcend this job today or this into the next career, into the next thing over time. These are some of the challenges I think we have to grapple with. So I'm going to ask a question and then direct it to Maria, and then ask the other panelists, one or two, if they'd like to just chime in. So as we ask ourselves these questions, and we are unanimous in our opinion of having to reintroduce the promising, hopeful narrative of the universally accepted value of a higher education degree or credential, what are some of the challenges and opportunities ahead?
So I think from what we heard from the panelists, we can very confidently say that California developed the most accessible system of education in the planet. And so if we did it once, I'm confident we can do it again, and we can keep doing it. But it goes back to we know that a college degree is worth it, but we have to keep making it worth it, right? It's not a static thing. It's not like something you buy. It's a process of human transformation. And what you need in that human transformation evolves over time. And we're in a different time period than we were when the master plan was created in the 1960s. We're in a totally different world, which means that process of human transformation also needs to be rethought. And so I think our biggest challenge, at least with UC, is that we're dealing with significant external threats. The federal government has, I don't even want to get into the attacks from the federal government and the budget uncertainty that has brought. And so when you live in an uncertain budgetary environment, right, when your house is burning down, it's hard to say, how am I going to renovate? You're not focused on that. You're focused on stability and keeping the trains running. And so I think that's the greatest challenge, because we are at a moment. We're at a moment of transformation where we have to ask ourselves fundamental questions about not just getting someone a degree, but how do we keep developing our degree systems so that it's a credential value. And that means rethinking, especially with AI, not just are people cheating, right? But what do people actually need to learn now then? How do they need to learn it? What does it mean to know that someone's learned it? I mean, these are really fundamental questions, and that needs space and dialogue like this. And so the challenge, I would say, is to stay focused on the future, even while there's budget uncertainties and federal threats ahead of us.
Thank you. Anyone? Yeah, Kristen, yes.
I would love to jump in. Maria got me all excited with her responses, and also look at her shoes. She's got these stunning pink shoes. You know, for me, you know, Chancellor Muñoz asked the question, challenge and opportunity. So what is the challenge from my perspective from the community colleges? I mean, it's hands down, AI to me is a big threat. And when you look at it, you know, we start talking about AI, and then in 6 months, we're talking about generative AI. And then in another 6 months, we're talking about agentic AI. I mean, think about agentic AI. You're looking at large language models with an autonomous nature to do all of the tasks, right? So what do humans need to do anymore, right? So challenge in a realistic sense, I mean, I think higher education needs to lean in, and we have to be the conscience in this age of AI. So that's the challenge. In terms of the opportunity that I see, the opportunity is also AI, because like never before, I believe that AI can become the true equalizer for to close the gap between the haves and the have-nots, the wealth gaps, the health gaps. All of it can be done because of the power to be able to take care, to accelerate someone's agency within a social context and within an economic context. So right now, the primary opportunity is how do we responsibly but boldly get into the world of generative and agentic AI to serve human agency, to unleash human agency. And if you think about the community colleges, we are about a little less than 10% of California's population. If we mobilize intentionally to say we're going to release human agency with the power of AI, it can become the great equalizer. So I feel this sense we're at a crossroads of a real challenge which could become a real opportunity.
Dr. Garcia.
Sonya spoke about the challenge and opportunity of AI, and I have to jump in on that because we too are seeing that at the CSU. We went ahead in 23 and went with AI for the entire university, for faculty, for staff, for students. The reason we did that is that we wanted to make sure that it's not only an ethical, it's an equity issue. Because we want to make sure that our students, regardless of where they're studying, can get the knowledge and understanding. Do we have the answer? Nobody has the answer in AI. But we have to grab it, and we have to make sure that we are working through it thoughtfully and purposefully. We have faculty development programs for our faculty who are engaged in what AI can not only do for their grading, but also for their curriculum, how they transform their curriculum. When we look at the data, and we look at the research, they're saying there haven't been jobs taken away. You have to upskill. So how do we upskill people to utilize AI? Secondly, we have a workforce acceleration board. It includes the governor's office. It includes all of the stakeholders at the university with students, but it also includes the powerhouses of AI, maybe Microsoft, NVIDIA, Google, all of them are, and I'm forgetting all of them, they're all sitting around the table telling us how they see AI transforming, and then they are giving our students micro-pay certificates, credentials on AI and how to use it. And you know it's like everything else. Yeah, there are resistors. But as you look back when we came, I'm old enough to talk about when the computer came out and faculty said, I will never use this in the classroom. And here we are, it's about change. So how do we help people change to the times and change to what the students are using. Because right now we had a survey, it was done by San Diego State, 190,000 respondents. And they talked about how the students are already using AI without us. So we have to make sure that they know what they're doing and to make sure that the sources are real. AI is not perfect. And we have to make sure that our faculty can learn from each other and learn from experts, not only in the CSU, but throughout the whole ecosystem. Through the UC, I was at a Stanford conference the other day on AI, learning from everybody, ecosystem of higher ed in this state, in order to grasp AI and prepare the public. That's one. I want to say to another one. I think another opportunity, and here I want to thank the governor and hope the legislators will continue to commit to fully funding our compact for the CSU. But for states, we are public universities, and we all know the budget tells you your priorities. How do we convince the legislators and the public that education, K through graduate school and beyond, is important for the state? When you realize that in the CSU, 80% of our graduates stay working within 50 miles radius of where they graduated. They're working in our communities. They're in the Central Valley. They run the businesses. They're your legislators. So we have to make sure that we're fully funding what is so important to keep California being the 4th largest economy in the world.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. You mentioned the computer. I remember when I was a graduate student, I was wiping off overhead plastic slides for a professor that I was TAing for, and I said, there's this thing called PowerPoint. We could probably put this, and they said, it's a fad. I've been using those overheads for 20 years. It's durable. I can feel that other technology won't be here. Keep cleaning the slides. So I did. I complied. She was my dissertation chair. I complied. Okay. And so the adoption, right, is sometimes takes time. I'm going to ask the next question of Chancellor Kristen. Sonya, and this might relate to some of what you already started to talk about in sort of the understanding and conceptualization and implementation of AI. What do you see as some priorities within your system that you think may offer students a significant differential, a positive differential as they move on to careers from your institutions and or to some of our institutions? What do you, and it could be AI, but maybe other things, partnerships, etc. And I'd ask Kristen as well to think about the same question. Sonya.
Yeah, well, I won't mention that dual enrollment continues to be a priority. I won't mention that credit for prior learning, when you're looking at working Californians, recognizing the learning and skills that they have developed in the workplace continues to be a priority. When we started, we had 25,000 Californians who had credit for prior learning. Now we're at 25,000, now we're at 95,000, and our goal is 250,000. And I won't mention AI because I talked about AI so much. What I will mention is 3 other areas that our Board of Governors have started identifying. One of them is internship, and Millie, Dr. Garcia talked about it so beautifully, and about the conversations in Fresno with President Saul here. So our Board of Governors in February had a retreat, and their big goal for the California community colleges is this: can every student that graduates with an associate's degree have as a default an internship opportunity? And we're expanding internship to also have programs like College Core, where you're in service. And we are starting with our career education programs to make sure that there is a default option built in. And the way we're defining internships sort of at a granular level is certainly having conversations with employers. So when we're talking to hospital partners, it's not only about nursing and health-related internships, but also talking about their IT department, talking about their communications department, because our students in the comms area and digital media can have internship opportunities. So that's one. Also looking at our cities and counties, and you mentioned, Millie, about the mayor here looking for internship opportunities. So it's the public sector internships. And then last but not least, looking at your college campus as a place to learn and earn. Internships, college as an employer. So we are going to be funding several demonstration projects which we will be launching. And knowing your executive director of CVHEC with the Central Valley really leading a lot of the innovation, probably we could, do some of that jointly in collaboration with you. I'll mention quickly two other areas that we are looking to move at scale. One is climate literacy. Our Board of Governors passed a regulatory change in Title V, which is in the general education for the sciences, that every student who graduates with a degree, an associate's degree, will have climate literacy. And that is pretty much defined in Title V, so you will be seeing that rolling out on your college campuses. And then the third one, which I won't lean into, is AI fluency for human agency. That is also being rolled out with resources to create demonstration projects. So lots of exciting but important work. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonya. Kristen.
This question really excites me because this is where we really spend our time thinking as a set of independent, and as you described, very diverse institutions. But when we come around the table as a set of institutions, and Dr. Stevens is on the board for AICCU, we really come together to really think about how can we best serve students and lean into one another and learn from the institutions around the table. We have large research institutions, we have liberal arts institutions, we have small, single-purpose institutions, but ultimately behind all those institutions is a student and our students, and we come together for our students. So we're focused on several initiatives. One is really strengthening transfer, and that goes towards affordability that's been raised, is to really make it more seamless for students to start in one place and then end in an institution that serves their needs. So strengthening transfer is absolutely important. Deepening our relationship with our public universities as partners in this work, again, really serving students and helping them succeed wherever they start, but really more importantly, helping them succeed across the finish line so that they're connected to their community and that job. The other part that we have been really talking about is affordability, and how can we work together across systems to address the real cost of higher education. So that's where private colleges really come in, because we have the ability to be nimble and innovate and create those new programs. So I'm super excited. This isn't for everyone, but we have 3 programs that have just been approved by WASC. They are 3-year degree programs focused on key industries. 3 years, it lowers the cost, it lowers the time to degree. So really thinking innovatively about programs and where they can work in regions, and again, across institutions, supporting one another. And then finally, I'm excited about the new Education Interagency Council, which we came together. Collaboration is not new between our segments, but collaboration between institutions. And now we have a state body that's going to be coordinated around this work. So I think that is something we should celebrate, but we're going to need to support it as well so that we can have a space for this innovation to take place.
Thank you, Kristen. I will tell you, I'm going to come to you for the next question, Maria. again, I just want to underscore how impressive this panel is, how important. You know, that introduction of that 3-year degree, okay, very, very provocative. It's already happening in other places, other states. In Europe, it's been happening for a long time. Sonya saying, I'm very concerned about AI. That's what leadership does. It introduces dynamic topics like that, and then here's the possibilities of AI. We either grapple with these now and exercise some leadership, or we will be managed by others that have grappled with it before we have. We've got to ask ourselves these questions. I don't know the answers, but I know that there are questions that are in the minds of our constituents and the people coming to our institutions. Affordability, I mean, that one we've heard. The housing issue, okay, exists today in a way it didn't 20 years ago. And internships, that's just a simple, back in the day, y'all, come on now. You got an internship. The value proposition was me being exposed to someone where I could acquire that cultural, that capital. And my remuneration was the benefit of what I learned. That worked. It doesn't today. How are we evolving, back to Maria's point, for the circumstances of the now? And so I'm going to ask this question of Vice Chairwoman Anguiano and then Chancellor García. So as we think about, as we grapple with these very challenging questions in this inflection point, how are systems working like the UC and the CSU and the CSU and the UC and others, okay? How are you working across systems or thinking about working across systems to then address these very evocative topics?
Just hand me easy ones all the time. Well, I'm glad you asked that because I did want to mention something that's the last question and this question, which is about the importance of transfer and creating a more seamless transfer process. UC has increased capacity by 11,000 students since 2021. It's a huge, huge growth in capacity. But part of that is also being able to ensure that our transfer students have a much easier path. And so I think that that's a key area of collaboration, especially now back to using AI for good. There's articulation takes forever. There's ways now that we can actually use technology to speed up that process for students. And so I think the other piece I would add is actually collaboration around digital infrastructure and technology, because these things are expensive. And so each of us developing our own little pilot at each institution for each course is not, I don't think, going to be possible for this stage of the evolution. We need to work together. I think a lot of the great initiatives of the California Learning Lab, so I would really encourage more funding and innovation where it's CSUs, UCs, and the community colleges working together to try new types of pedagogy, whether it be in writing or in math, to show what's possible, and then to make it so that all our students have access to it. So I'll just point to that.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Then if others want to chime in.
By saying that we do meet together, the UC, with Sonya and JB Milliken and myself meet every other month to talk about what are the major issues. But we're the heads, right? So what we want to do is make sure that our presidents, and I have 3 of them here today, hear very loud and clear about how do you work in partnership with your regions in order for our students to really go through the system. So I have to talk about Bulldog Bound, because I think that is an amazing program that demonstrates how you not only work with the community colleges, all of them in the Central Valley, you work with the Fresno Unified School District, and they are in connection. And it is a promise that they begin Fresno State in the 9th grade with advisors, bringing them not only to campus, but telling and promising the families that if they continue and meet, they have automatic admissions into Fresno State. This year alone, they had 1,500 people apply for this program. And the parents have to sign in. And they tell the parents they have to take these courses in the 9th grade, these courses in the 10th grade, these courses in the 11th grade, and these courses in the 12th grade. That is an example of what has to happen across all of our universities with all the presidents. I know that Stanislaus and Bakersfield and Fresno right now are working with advanced placement. So the students would get a letter saying, congratulations, you have been admitted to Stanislaus State. You know how that feels for a first generation like myself to get a letter like that? And you haven't even applied. So those are the kinds of things. The devil's in the details. You know, we can talk up here about how it's going to get done, but it's the presidents and their faculty and their staff that are working together. Look, the CSU depends on the community college. 40% of our students, 500,000 almost, are community college transfers. And they graduate at high rates and go into either the UCs or the private universities or go to work. It's a seamless transfer. It's the partnership that we have. I will never forget when I first came in, we were talking about all these students that take the associate's degree transfer program and are not applying. And Chancellor Kristen immediately said, I will get you the lists, give them to the campuses, and they can start calling those individuals who got an ADT, associate degree, to transfer and hadn't transferred yet. That's the kind of partnerships that we have to have and ensure that they continue to learn about what it means to go to college. Because let's remember another thing. My parents didn't know. I'm first generation too. And when I talk to parents, and I still do in the neighborhood, in Brooklyn, I know it's Brooklyn, but it's the same thing, they don't understand the difference between the community college and four-year institutions. In California, when I was the president of ASCU, I got 4 Latino families call me. They were heads of families who wanted me to talk to them in Spanish, the difference between the institutions in California, the institutions in Texas, because they don't understand why is it UC and why is it CSU and what's a community college. We failed these families. We have to educate the families as well as educate the students.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. You know, some of you will recall Dr. Duran's comments right at the beginning about this not happening just everywhere, that the consortial spirit of cooperation and working together, and any of us in these jobs understand that I'm very focused on my institution, but that shouldn't be at the expense of other institutions. And so how do we think about how do we do these things differently across the UC, with the CSU, with the privates, with the community colleges? I suppose I feel very similarly in terms of the important, the critical, completely indispensable role of the community colleges to move students into our institutions and or to go to work. But if we think about the larger need of our state and of our country, then the importance of that system is simply incalculable. And so how do we think about this in a different sort of way, continuing with delivering equity and inclusion for all? Equity, inclusion, and opportunity for a prosperous future for all. And so I'm going to put another, I want to leave a few minutes of time for questions from the audience for our distinguished panel, but telegraph to the panelists that one of the final questions right now we want to just very quickly before we move to questions from the audience, and then I'll ask for final thoughts from the panelists. It seems to me that regardless of our system, we, and you've all mentioned it indirectly or directly, the legislature. So, and some of us woke up yesterday in Washington, D.C. Some of us were there for 2 weeks, Millie. Some of us are on the way. Some of you might be catching a flight today to D.C. But what are your thoughts, and I'll begin with Kristen and with Maria, in terms of the important role of our lawmakers, legislators, and advocates?
Thank you for that question. So critically important. And thank you for being in DC for 2 weeks. We all need to be back in Washington repeatedly and sharing what we do and the support that we need going forward. I just want to go back to the, working together to, we have to work together to be our best. And California has incredible challenges, and we can only solve them by working together. And that, to your question about how the legislature can be supportive, first, let me thank this legislature for being so responsive in the face of the federal threats and the initiatives that have already been introduced this year. HR 1 and the loss of student financial aid support for our graduate programs that fuels the talent this state needs in order to succeed, to continue to be that large economy, that program was eliminated at the federal government. The state has stepped in with Senator Sasha Perez, who's introduced, through the budget process, a new program to backfill that. That support is critically needed. We have the Scott Wiener HR, I don't have the number, but his research bond. So California has taken a leadership position to fund the really important programs that we need to support our students, to support research, to support innovation. But where I would leave this is back to student affordability, because that goes back to the value piece and why people are questioning, is it worth it? Is spending all this money worth it? We have to work together to keep it college attainment affordable. So this legislature, I beg and urge them to continue to fund student financial aid. And for students in the independent sector, our Cal Grant Award, their Cal Grant Award is subject to the budget every year. It is time to tie that to CPI and give students and families, regardless of what institution they go to, the stability and the predictability to know what their financial aid is going to be. And that's in partnership with us and our institutions. We're going to continue to invest institutional aid. We're going to continue also to be in Washington, as hard as it is right now, but this time will change. But this is a partnership. It's a federal partnership. It's a state partnership. It's an institution partnership. And lastly, it's a regional partnership. We need the support of our industries, of our philanthropic organizations, in our communities, working in partnership with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Chancellor García.
Working? There it goes. First of all, we have to make sure that we know our legislators, not just when we have a problem, but to make sure you're inviting them to your campuses and to the system office to have a cup of coffee, to have a drink together, to talk about who they are and what are their goals. We don't do that enough, but we are working very hard in doing that. One of the things that we did, which I think is really wonderful, when we go up to the state legislators, we found out how many of the legislators have graduated from the CSU. So a couple of them took the leadership, and now there is a little cohort of legislators who graduated from the CSU, meet with me and the presidents, and want to know what is it how they can help us. Because they love their alma mater, what has happened for them. And I always tell our presidents, make sure you tell any controversial issues coming up on your campus that your legislator in your region knows about it. They want to be in the know, they want to help, and we have to make sure that we have that kind of relationship. We're in a relationship business with them, and that we have a relationship with them. Federal government's a little different, but because we too have lost lawsuits, I am extremely worried about the Pell Grant. There's a shortfall in the Pell Grant. Today, 230,000 of our students receive Pell. If Pell is either lowered or the requirements to get it different, it affects every single one of us in this panel. And we have to be in Washington, talking to legislators, speaking to them. But it's not only that. All of us belong to what they call the Big Six in Washington, D.C. I was a president of one of them before I came back. What are they doing for us in the dues that we're giving them? With the amount of community colleges we have, the UCs and the AAU, the U with the private independents, and ask you, are they fighting for us from Pell? Because that is not only a blue state issue, that's a red state issue. There are poor people all across the country using Pell. And I am really worried of how this will affect not only California, but the entire nation for the most vulnerable in this country, who will be the majority, by the way.
Thank you, Chancellor. No understating the importance of Pell. I remember a few years ago, remember when we were talking about doubling the Pell? Now we're like, preserve the Pell. I know, that's why I'm making the point. Very, very important. Chancellor Kristen, and then we'll end with Vice Chairwoman Anguiano.
Yeah, so the question was on the federal front and on the state front. So ditto to Kristen and ditto to Millie on, sort of federal strategy. What I'll add to that is the president came out with his budget for next year, and the document is actually pretty readable. It's not one of those crazy-making budget documents. And I kind of honed into the education budget and the Department of Labor budget because a lot of the granting that used to happen through the Department of Education has now been moved to the Department of Labor. So that's where my sort of eye went and I was looking. I mean, clearly the funding for education is declining significantly. So whether it is the number of Pell Grants and the per student Pell Grant amount to MSI, HSI funding, to FIPSI grants, which I know in the Central Valley, many of our colleges and universities have it to seed innovation before it becomes scalable. However, the congressional process is where we can engage in. And the idea of developing that relationship with our congressional leaders and having them understand how the students, which are their constituents, are getting impacted directly is very, very impactful. We saw last year when there was all the retraction of the funding and it impacted our colleges, our presidents and chancellors in trying to pivot midstream on a grant funding to try to make things work was like super crazy. But we saw that Congress did not uphold many of those retractions, and they were reinstated, including for our international students. So that vigilance is going to be critical, and I think we are now spending more attention to the federal conversations, at least than I have in the past. It's like super focused. On the legislative front, I think, we have a lot of projects for example, in the Central Valley, a project that I'm tracking very closely is the Ag Tech program, where we're looking at those workforce skills focused, which is both supported by the state as well as the federal government. So looking at very intentionally a pathway to connecting with the legislators and seeing how we can move from innovation to stable institutional funding. And lastly, to underscore something that Maria had made, our legislature funds higher education, pretty well. An area that we could lean into is on infrastructure, is on digital infrastructure. I know there was a call from our governor to kind of create this Cal Computes infrastructure, and my sense is it needs to reside within the higher education space so that the public universities and colleges are influencing and providing the guardrails for private sector innovation.
Maria?
Well, I would agree with everything that was just said and really want to echo my gratitude to the state legislature, who's really been supportive in funding our budgets, and also Cal Grant program that drives so much affordability for our students, and the request to continue to do so. But I think I would be remiss if I didn't, at this point, talk about UC research and the importance of UC research. UC gets about, I think, almost $7 billion from the federal government in research. It's a substantial amount, and it really is the engine that drives the economy in California. You think about new sectors like quantum and biotech, and even all Silicon Valley is really driven from research happening at our UCs. In fact, all 10 of our UCs are R1s, which is the highest level of research any university can have. I know UC Merced just got that designation, the fastest of any in the country in 20 years, which was remarkable.
Oh, okay.
a little shout out to,
thank you.
Chancellor Muñoz there. But that's something that people don't quite understand as much. That's part of the UC mission and why that is so important. And I'll say, and I'll channel President Milliken here because he loves to talk about this. But out of the 6 Nobel Prize winners last year from America, 5 of them were UC faculty. And so we're driving not just innovation for California, but the whole world. And so I would really impress upon DC and the state that if we're to keep competitive, if we're to keep figuring out how to, I mean, we have a lot of problems to solve in society. Like, we need research to figure out how to keep, life-saving care and figuring out how to reduce wealth inequality and public policy and cleaning the oceans and cleaning the air. I mean, just so much to do, and that research is what's going to drive those solutions.
Thank you, Vice Chairwoman. And one thing, in addition to all of what our systems, campuses, colleges, and universities do to energize the economy, to lead toward prosperity, one thing that we don't say enough, I think, is how what we do is also a public good. When that young person graduates from your teacher education program and is teaching in that 6th grade classroom or that high school history, they're inculcating certain values in that young person that will then impact a community for 50 years. That innovation, that discovery, that vaccine, that piece of instrumentation, that equipment, those are things that make society better. And so it's about preparation and workforce participation and individual prosperity, wonderful, but it then leads to a more prosperous, more just, healthier society, which means a more stable society. And so often we forget that education, higher ed, what is the value proposition of higher ed? The value proposition of higher ed is that it is a public good. And it's good for our public as well for us individually. So I want to take a minute or two, if there are any questions or comments or observations from any one of your tables. I see a hand from the front table by this well-dressed young man. Yes? Yes, sir. And please, your name and your occupation.
Thank you, everyone. Saúl Jiménez Sandoval, President of Fresno State. I want to pose the question of innovation, specifically to the UCs, to Vice Chair Anguiano. Innovation is what drives the economy, as you stated before. And even before your comments, my question was that. In the CSU, we have 500,000 students. At Fresno State alone, we have a 1,000-acre farm. Our research is applied. We directly collaborate with the industry. And it seems like the model of the 1960s, which exclusively gave the UCs the power to innovate and to research, has to change nowadays. There has to be another way of collaborating, inter-segmental, inter-system collaboration in terms of research, so that we collaboratively can do with the following: UC, CSU, community colleges together, working towards a better, more powerful California for the future. So I'd like to know your thoughts on research and collaboration amongst the 3 systems, including, of course, the privates.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'll just say I just agree with what you just said. And it's what I said earlier about we created the most accessible system of education on the planet in the 1960s with the tools and systems we had available to us. 60 plus years later, there's now new capabilities and new things that we can do and new ideas that we have about how to collaborate, and we need to lean in hard to do so.
Thank you. Question in the...
Hello. Good morning. Thank you, panelists, for your discussion and your perspectives. My name is Sade Williams. I'm the director for Go Public Schools. We do a lot of advocacy work in the community, helps families have the leadership skills necessary and collaborate to support their students. Now, my question is to the panel. How can institutions move beyond traditional parent orientations to create a unified support ecosystem that empowers families as co-navigators of the student journey, specifically by leveraging community-based financial resources and local partnerships to bridge the affordability gap for the entire household? Thank you.
Any, Sonya, and then Dr. Garcia?
That's a question. So where my mind is going to respond is linking and partnering with community-based organizations to be able to connect with a larger community, because community-based organizations are places of trust and they are anchor organizations with the community, should not be an ad hoc enterprise. It needs to be systematically incorporated into policymakers' thinking. When COVID hit, and you think about the vaccinations, how did we get our communities vaccinated? It was through partnerships with community-based organizations that outreach was able to happen to far-to-reach communities. Right now, when we're looking at this whole concept, I mean, everyone's talking about AI literacy and AI fluency. And, the haves and the have-nots is going to be widened. If we don't get community-based organizations involved with our higher ed segments, that is going to exacerbate the problem. So when it comes to the partnership with parents, the issues that you're raising, I think it is very clear that we need to come up with much more systematic and systemic solutions to having community-based organizations as part of the social, educational fabric of our communities and of the state.
Number one, absolutely. The other thing I would say is, I mentioned earlier that our presidents are working within their regions. And on those committees are community-based organizations that are giving voice to what the universities should be doing. I saw it yesterday at Fresno. But I know that Britt is doing it at Stanislaus. Each of our presidents are working with their region. And when I say collaboration, it's not only the businesses. It's the community-based organizations, because that's where we go to connect with families. I could give a couple of examples. I mean, one of the examples is when we did Super Sunday for the African American population. They would go across and and who's at those Sunday services? The community-based organizations that help the campuses to get to the families. When I was at Dominguez Hills, and I know that's still going on, I think Fresno's doing it, they had a education fair in Spanish, where you have the community-based organizations and all of the undergraduate and graduate institutions there, and K or P through 12 or K through 12 there, speaking in Spanish, and the community-based organizations have their table, and they're explaining how they can help. And at Fullerton, they have a house in the city where community-based organizations help the lowest part of that community to ensure that they're getting health care, et cetera, social workers, nurses, and counseling. And they go to, and who's there? The community-based organizations, the faculty and the staff, and the students are learning how to work within the community. So that's the kind of thing that we have to do across all of the regions that we serve.
Thank you. In closing, Dr. Soares.
Ditto to that, and thank you for that question, and more importantly, thank you for your support. Success for a student requires incredible support, and institutions alone cannot do it. So we rely upon these partnerships to ensure our students can succeed, and that means housing assistance, that means mental health care supports, that means our food pantries, This is a partnership with you, and together is how we're going to get our students across the finish line. So thank you.
On that very positive note, getting across the finish line, join me in thanking our distinguished panel.